Hello and welcome. This is Working Class to World Class. But before we go any further, I do have a little favour of you. If you could hit that follow or subscribe button, then that would be a massive help. Thank you. In this episode, I chat with a really humble guy who shares his story as a dyslexic kid, and he reminisces about family holidays when he got on that bus and went all the way to Spain to the campsites. But now he is one of the top creatives working for some of the biggest ad agencies in the world. Breaking through the barriers of adversity. I'm Lynn Lester, and this is Working Class to World Class. So John, welcome to Working Class to World Class. It's really good to meet you for the first time actually today.
Yes, hello. Yeah, it's great. I've listened to a lot of your podcasts. You've had some absolute legends on, especially in the advertising industry. Like, wow, yeah.
Amazing. Well, I'm sure this is going to be equally as good, and we're going to find out in a second, aren't we? So for everyone tuning in, this is I always start by really sort of setting the scene, I guess, to work out who are you, what do you do, and just sort of profile you in the current day.
So yeah, I mean, I like you've had people on like Hegarty and Dave Trott and stuff like that who've got decades and decades of experience of advertising. I've got merely 20 and a bit uh, experience in advertising, I'm currently ECD, which is Executive Creative Director of Atomic, which is an independent agency, like a full service agency, and before that I was CD at Mother London and Wyden and Kennedy and Fallon and VCP and other big network agencies, JWT and stuff like that. So I've looked after brands you will know and my family know and brands that you wouldn't. So, like everything from Coca-Cola and Nike to Orange when it was a brand, Cadbury's, EasyJet, um, and various other brands. And Stella Artois is a big one that I looked after for a long time. Johnson and Johnson, I looked after a lot of those globally as well. So yeah, I've been around a bit, which is always, you know, kind of reassuring, but always a bit worrying. You feel like you get stuck in your ways a bit. So it's good to try and get yourself out there and meet people, see what's going on. But yeah, so now I found myself generally gravitating towards independent agencies, just because of the energy and kind of like they express their independence a little bit more. They're a little bit more kind of, uh, can I say it? Not pushy, but a bit scrappier, right? They get stuff done, basically. Whereas in the big agencies, it takes forever to get something done. But yeah, I find myself here at Atomic, leading the creative output here, which is really fun. And yeah, it is a great job that we do. And you can get bogged down in the kind of day to day of it, but it's still a fantastic job.
Yeah, absolutely. It's loads of fun. I mean, I think it's funny, like you were talking about your family knows some of your brands that you've worked on. Because
Yeah.
I think for me, my family sometimes still have no idea what I do. And even people in the industry still don't know sometimes because my job is quite wide.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you know what? When I first started, my dad was like, "You're not wearing a suit. What you're going to, and even, until well, not fairly recently. It's like 10 years ago he was going, "You're flying to New York and you're meeting that one of the CEO, like the CEO of Johnson and Johnson, you're not wearing a suit." And I was like, "No, I'm just wearing what? Oh my God, what's he going to think?" I was going, "They're not going to look at me. They're looking at what I'm showing." And he just couldn't get his head around it. Still can't.
And it is amazing because, we're going to get on to your background in a second, but I think the thing that's got to be said is when you do come from a kind of humble background, to be in your sort of, guess, your own clothes, to not in this suit, not to be stuffy, it's really quite liberating, I find. I don't know if you find that as well.
Yeah, like as a creative, I think there's like it's a funny thing, isn't it? There's an expectation that the creatives they dress creatively and everything like that. And actually, like, in my experience, it's not everyone, but in my experience, like, it doesn't matter. It's like some people express themselves in the wrappers that they put around themselves, and some people express themselves in the things that they do and they think. Um, But yeah, it's a funny one not having to have suits and then being around people. I mean, they're literally called suits, right? It's like, and not doing that. And it's kind of like, if you spend a lot of your time, which I had done around them, you start going, maybe I should dress a little bit smarter. But, you know, smart for me, it'll just be a button-up shirt. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. You washed it for the day. It was fine.
Yeah,
Smelled
fine.
good. So let's go back then. I mean, obviously, for people tuning in, a lot of people aren't in the advertising industry. So,
Yeah.
you've described it really well. You're working with these big brands. Effectively, you're helping them sell their products in
Mhm.
different ways and promote their brand and, obviously remain famous and build that competitive edge. And so, I guess away back at the beginning, I can imagine, and we'll get to it, where you probably never thought you'd end up where you are today. Even the talk of going to New York's like, what? I still listen to, is it Alicia Keys, New York,
Yeah,
or
yeah,
Empire State, because it just fills me with that kind of excitement and buzz.
yeah. It's it's weird. It's weird because when I first started, I'd go back home and I'd go to the pub with my mates, and they'd be like, "So what you doing?" I'm like, "Oh, well, I'm working on Honda, and I'm doing this, and like we went to we went out to shoot this thing, and we come back, and we're sitting in this edit, and they're like, What do you? So what do you do?" And I'm like, "Well, we'll sit down with a blank sheet of paper and just like think about just pretty much like we're doing, having a laugh in the pub, but just a bit more focused." And then you get paid for that, and you fly all over the world. I was like, "Yeah, yeah, yeah," and they're like, they couldn't believe it. They can't believe it. And I
No.
try and sneak early on. I try and sneak their names into like radio ads or stuff like that I was writing, and I'd go, "Oh, look, I've listened to that on whatever," and you might hear your name or something like that. But um, yeah, it's a weird thing, isn't it? Because when I was younger, I just thought the brands did it. I thought like the brands actually created their own advertising, but after being in the industry for 20 years, the hardest thing to do is actually talk about yourself, even if you're one of the best brands in the world. Um, and that's why they kind of outsource it. But I never knew this job existed. I never knew this job existed. I never knew you could do this, like, and like be, and the opportunities in the world opens up to you. It's just absolutely phenomenal. It's just,
Absolutely.
I mean, I can remember I was writing a description for myself for an awards jury thing and go, I can't believe my luck. I literally, the opening sentence, I can't believe my luck, you know, like at what I do today from the where I started. Like, yeah, it's just, I never, for a job I never knew existed until I was 17. It's incredible.
Yeah, I bet. Well, you talked about where it started. So where did it start for you? Where were you brought up? Where were you born?
So I was born in Wallsend, which is no points for guessing it's the end of a wall. It's the end of Hadrian's Wall, and it's a it's a shipbuilding town basically. It was one, and so my family all worked there. My grandfather worked there, my dad worked there, my uncle worked there. Um, and the first house my parents got with my elder brother on the way was within the shadow. You see these photos of the ships hanging over terrace streets. It was that's where they got a house. And their first house they saved up for ages. My mum actually worked in uh is it De Beers, the currency people, they make the pounds and the coins and all that kind of stuff. She worked there. So they were working two jobs, so they managed to save up enough money. And then my brother was born, and they bought this place, and it still had an outside toilet. So they bought this place, they got a grant to convert it to an inside toilet. And it's like, and it was a little terrace house, end of terrace it was. And then my dad did a lot of work. He was working a hell of a lot of time away from home as well. But at that time, it was the shipyards, but they were slowly being crumbled away. Shipyard after shipyard after shipyard was closing. You still had all these huge cranes. The skyline of my childhood is just, you'd see these huge dinosaur size cranes, like huge cranes. They're all gone now. And then every so often you'd hear the hooter in the playground for, you know, start the day, break, lunch, and home time. You'd just hear it and it blast across the whole of the area. So your clock gets the whole, it's not just for the workmen, it's the whole kind of thing. And then you had these stream of guys coming out from the river up the banks. But yeah, it's all gone now. And it's such a weird thing because the industry just collapsed. Well, but all the schools were set up for that. So like they had a great like design tech department in all the schools. They were just basically making people like training them up at school to feed into that industry. But when the industry was gone or was dissolving, they didn't move. They were still trained. The CDD department was huge. The metalworking department was big. There was a fairly big science department, but the arts there was tiny bit. It was actually part of the library in the school that I had. Um, so it wasn't really college. And like being dyslexic, which didn't get found out until I was last year of university, which is just crazy, was it was a real struggle going to that school. But yeah, so the schools just they trained you. I can remember having the careers advice people you'd go to, and
Yeah.
and they were saying, "Oh, what do you want to do?" And I was going, "Oh, well, maybe like I'd like to be, not above my station. I'd like to be an architect." But I didn't say that. I said an architectural technician because I knew it was technical drawing, and I was like, "Okay." And they just laughed at me. They just laughed in my face because they knew there was nothing. There was literally nothing up there. My brother actually got one of the last apprenticeships in the area, um, and that was it. So I was basically like, so a lot of people moved away. My dad then started working uh, abroad, like Germany, France, Spain, um, Portsmouth, um, and then he he got trained up to work on the oil rig. So he's gone a lot of the time, you know, and he was working night shift. So there was a good few years where we didn't really see him that much. But hey, it was what you had to do in order to keep your family going, you know.
Yeah, for sure. So when you were born, how old was your brother?
He's 2 years older than me. So he kind of managed to get the tail end of the last couple of apprenticeships, and he's doing great now. He's got, it's funny because he went to night school and stuff like that. I can remember I used to go and get him and stuff, using my dad's car. Um, but it was he was doing that, getting educated now, and you know, he's quite high up in what he does. And I think that's just the work ethic that my dad put into us, you know. Well, not just my dad, my mom, she had like two jobs, whilst my dad was working away, she was working in a supermarket and a dinner lady, you know. Um, so it's kind of that relentless need. Is that funny thing with a working class is like the mentality doesn't leave you that it could all just go away, you know? Like it could just something could happen, it could just stop, or you haven't got enough of what you need to
Yeah.
it's a funny mentality, because you have to strive, you have to keep working. No, as long as you're working, you're all right, you know?
Yeah, totally. I mean, I guess that was the thing as well, isn't it? If you think about what your mum and dad had to do to make a living, they weren't maybe, obviously your dad then worked in the oil rigs, which I'm sure paid a bit more. But, but he had to sacrifice a lot, go away. And I guess it left your mum in a position where, well, she had to bring the kids up, right? And so what was that like when your dad was going away? Because I have a similar story. My dad used to work in the newspapers, which I'll tell you about in a second. But yeah, it'd be
Yeah.
good to know how that kind of felt.
Well, it's tough, isn't it? It's kind of like, you're not a single parent family, but you kind of are in a way, like it's but thankfully my mom's uh my my grandparents are Irish, so my mum they went back to Ireland to give birth to my mum, so she'd definitely be Irish. So there's a big family there, and we used to go and visit my cousins and my aunt and my uncle. My uncles used to come round, so there was always like a male presence there, and you know um it's tough because you get these phone calls, and it'd be like he'd be in dig somewhere, and it'd be like he'd be putting coins in and stuff like that. And I remember one time he was working in Portsmouth on in an MOD thing. He was working on a submarine, a nuclear submarine, and weirdly he'd grown a mustache, right? and the ID, and then the Marines on the door, it didn't match his photo because he'd grown a mustache. And these are guys who would be like passing him every day. And at one point, one particular point, they went, that doesn't match. So then he was like, right, you need to go to the office. So he's gonna lose a day's pay, right? So you need to go to the office to get a photo done, and then it all needs to be checked and security clearance and all that kind of stuff. So I can remember him. There was a big upset because we got home from school. My mum was like, oh, she was really angry. Because obviously he lost a day. And he'd called up during the middle of the day, he'd lost a day's pay, and she was just like, shave it off, shave it off. But he couldn't because obviously he'd done the security thing again. So I can remember him coming home from like on leave. He wasn't in the army, but he was waiting for the MOD, and he had a mustache, and my mum hated it. And we were all just like, because he had this mustache, and he couldn't take it off because he'd have to go through the whole thing again. It was just absolute nightmare. But just that sort of silly stuff like that. But it's yeah, the working at home from digs and stuff. It was hard for us, but it must have been awful for him. He
Yeah.
wasn't around at the time we were growing up. And the oil rigs was better. Whilst he was away for a long time, at least he was home for a while as well. And it was kind of yeah, it was just a good chunk of time when he was home.
Absolutely. I mean, my dad used to work in the newspapers. As I say, he used to work for the Mirror Group and the production team, like just manually wrapping papers and stuff. And I
Yeah,
always remember he would come home, and it was never frequent. So it was like come home for 4 days, away for four, back for two, away for five, back
yeah,
for five, away for two. And it was
yeah,
just like every week I had no idea what my dad was doing. And it
yeah,
might
yeah,
not have been as infrequent as that, but it felt like that in my mind. But I loved it when he came back. I'd always meet him at the local train station, and he'd always give me a call back down the road. We'd have our sweets, and so it was almost like a treat every time your dad came back
yeah,
from
yeah,
work. And so obviously it was very similar to you and my mum. Me being the youngest of seven kids, my mum was raising a big family, although
yeah.
some of them were already married at that point. And so when you were growing up, then did you get to go on like holidays, or what was it? What was kind of every day like?
So you know what? There's like I can remember us going on holiday to Spain for the first time, which was a big deal, but it was a bus there. So it was a bus from Newcastle, then down to the south coast, a ferry, then a bus all the way through France, and it was like we loved it, but like I can't imagine doing that now. It was like 3 days on a bus. It was like, or two and a half, I can't remember, but oh my God, imagine being with a bunch of kids on a bus for that long. And it was just like, yeah. But we loved it. And then we camped in um Marbella. It was probably somewhere like that. We camped there. But we did that, and I can remember that being the first like for like holiday. We just
Yeah.
loved it.
And I bet to your friends, like you would have probably been as the sort of posh, lucky one because you were away and you were in this place called Spain, and it
Yeah,
felt
yeah.
really exotic, didn't it, as a kid?
Well, yeah, because my dad was working away a lot, and my mum had jobs as well. Like we never we weren't hungry, right? It's a weird thing to say that. Like now it's like food's seemingly everywhere, and it's like um it wasn't it's hard to explain. Like, when things were bad, you didn't, your parents were giving you food off their plate, but now like because of my dad just working a lot and my mum working as well, we were okay. We didn't go hungry. We wanted for stuff, obviously. I can remember going to my friends actually. I can remember going to my friends and being absolutely in awe because I went to the fridge and they had actual cans of like fizzy pop. I was absolutely amazed. Like like a bottle of the cheap cola was like a treat. And I can remember going around and they had like I think it was cans of Pepsi or something. And I was like, and it wasn't Christmas, it wasn't like any special occasion. And I was like, oh my God, this is incredible. And I was like, wow. And it's just to think that now. Wow.
I know what you
Just,
mean. I remember my brother when he used to work in the trucks. He was a lorry driver, and he used to bring in Highland spring water, so fizzy water.
yeah.
And we used to have diluting juice. and we would sort of, people would call it squash.
Yes,
And
gosh.
yeah, we pour the fizzy water in, and it was like as if you had orange juice, like orange, fizzy
Yeah, yeah,
orange. It was just so exciting. It was like we
yeah,
felt,
it was.
although we did get iron brew a lot, as you can imagine, it was a staple in our house.
Yeah, yeah. But it was stuff like that, like, special occasions were like pulled out. What pretty average stuff, like, now when you think of it. But it's this kind of like, I think, the working class changes, doesn't it? Thankfully, things improve, right? It's like if you said like my dad's working class when he was, young versus my working class when I was young is like a world away,
Yeah,
outside toilet, somebody coming and shoveling the stuff into like it's a world away, thankfully. And obviously it gets better. So, you know, 30 years later, it's improved, but it's like, you know, kids are still going hungry and like,
I know.
missing, like literally missing the school meals thing just absolutely gutted me. Like, why? Why would you do that? You're going to get more disruptive kids. You're going to get lower grades. It's just, you people made that decision not knowing, never having gone through that, and they should be forced to do that. Cut off the parlor, the what is it, the subsidized cafe restaurant in Parliament. Just close it for a term and see how they deal with it. Or they'd probably just go down the road somewhere else. But it's
Exactly.
like, you know,
I know. It's
walk a
obscene,
mile in
isn't it?
someone's shoes first.
Yeah, it's awful. It is awful. God, let's not go there. We'll get into
Yeah,
politics and we'll be here. We will be
I
here for
know
a
this
while.
week though, this week.
Absolutely. And so I guess, you've talked a few times about working class and how it's got better. So do you think in your mind you're still working class?
I think I've got the attitude of it, but I know I'm not. Like, look at, if you just took my lifestyle on paper, I'm middle class. I don't, I like, and you know what? I'm absolutely proud to the fact that I've went from that to this. And it's like, I've still got the attitude of, you know, striving and working hard and doing that. And that, like, the thing over here that it could just all, you could say, I'm sure loads of people, like, you could say something stupid, it'd all just go away, and like, you're back where you started. But I'm middle class and I've made it. I've done it, right? I've transitioned. It doesn't mean that I've lost anything. It's just that I'm now better off than I ever was, that I could have imagined. But I've, because of my desire and my kind of hunger to work and get work done, And I think I wouldn't be middle class. If I'd started out middle class, I don't know if I would have got here, if you know what I mean. I might have just stayed middle class. But I
Interesting.
think that the desire and the work ethic and just like the different way of thinking, like the hunger, I just call it hunger to do something, to get something done is like, you think of working class, you think of like, civil servants and stuff like that, like, where actually when you look at big organizations and don't rock the boat, keep it going. And it's kind of, you can see why people just remain there and don't cause a fuss. But, you know, people cause a fuss and just point at stuff and go, is that the right thing to do? They're the ones who get stuff done and change things. And I think a lot of those people, the mentality of questioning stuff, being a bit of a being a bit rebellious and possibly having a chip on your shoulder as well of how things have turned out and that it isn't a fair deal. Knowing that the world isn't fair early on helps you. It really does. It's hard, but it helps you because you have to make it fair.
Yeah.
Um, whether that's for yourself or whether that's for people that you feel aren't getting a fair deal. And I think that background, that's always with me, but I'm proud to have made that transition. Like, wow,
Yeah.
it's
It's like an
it's a,
achievement. Is
it's an
that
achievement.
visible achievement because you've
Yeah,
been there, you've done it. You don't want to lose it. And actually, it's really nice that you're really in touch with yourself and you're like, "Do you know what, I have done it." And you
Yeah.
kind of recognize it's a kind of hustle, and it's, you fought to where you've got to. And that sort of brings me around to your, I guess, your schooling. So what were you like academically? Because obviously, I'm really keen to know how you kind of made that jump. But let's go back to maybe the younger years at school.
Mm. So it was like, I was, you know what? I was obviously I was dyslexic, um, and that didn't get picked up for years and years. So I was a slow reader, and I got put in a special class. But the teacher in that class said, "John's fine. He's like whatever." I just needed someone with me to do that. So my mum spent a lot of time with me like that as well, and I figured out tricks. And I think a lot of dyslexics do this. Like you figure out tricks and your own little ways of either reading or writing and your own little rules of doing that, but you still have to consciously do apply those rules. It just doesn't come naturally. It's like my wife will read and she'll just read it, and I'll be like, "How are you reading so quickly?" You know. But in a different way, I'll read. I'll take longer, but I absorb every detail. So we'll read the same book, and I'll go, "Oh, isn't it interesting? You could tell that it was a foreshadowing moment here when this is that that was mentioned when they mentioned that." And she was like, "Really? Really?" I was like, "Yeah, yeah, you could tell at that point." And she has to check her memory, whereas it's all clear in my head. But I think it's just the fact that it was more difficult made me pay more attention to it in reading. So like that was tough because it didn't really get the help and support that I should have needed. But you know, I really enjoyed like, I suppose you'd say the creative bits, right? The art and all that kind of stuff. Unfortunately, I'm not a very talented musician, but like, also the school only had one keyboard, which got stolen. Um, but you know, the art and stuff, I got encouraged by a teacher, Mr. Brown. And I think everyone's got this story. One teacher who just saw something in them. This is why teachers are just phenomenal, right? Like, and that kind of put me on a track. I did like science, but I never had the maths to kind of enjoy it. I still read about science now. I get the New Scientist magazine, and I really enjoy it, right? I know I can't do the detail of it, but I just like the bigger thoughts and the bigger ideas because it just opens your mind to stuff in the same way that kind of thinking creatively about stuff. But so I gravitated thanks to Mr. Brown, and he put me into every art GCSE there was, which was too much, unfortunately. And I was there working all hours. Thankfully, he stayed as well, working all hours on your projects, doing pottery and photography. We had a dark room, which was amazing, but amazing when the right people were in there. Other times it was used to just go and beat people up in the dark room, and scissors had to be taken away from certain people in certain lessons if they were in the room, you know. So I was doing all that, and I didn't come out as good. He probably had overconfidence in me, so I didn't come out massively well there, which was a bit of a blow. But when I kind of came out of high school, there was nothing. So there was no apprenticeship, no nothing to go to, and it was just about biding my time, right? So like you've got this moment. What can you do? So other than getting a getting a job in a supermarket and getting a job in a dog track, waving the flag for the dogs to come out for a bit of for a bit of cash, so I could get around on a bus and that. Like there wasn't really anything. So a few of us at that school went to a sixth form college. Luckily, education was free at this point, and I studied a really weird group of. Again, it just shows that I didn't. There was nothing. I didn't know what to do. So I studied art, right, A level, um, graphic communication, uh, design tech, geology, and then I did City and Guilds at like AutoCAD at the time, um, which was just it's a weird group. And I've got mates who are now petroleum geologists and like field survey geologists and stuff like that, and I'm just not. Again, it's a science bit. I liked it, but the mathematics of it wasn't good. So I was doing that, and then it was around kind of music started to become really important. So I would go and see a lot of bands at the unis, at the two universities in Newcastle, Northumbria, and Newcastle. And there was a lot of good small gigs. And obviously, within that world, it starts to become a bit more, it opens
Yeah.
up to a little bit of a different group. And I just thought it was really interesting. I met a few people who were going to art school, and I was like, oh, okay. So I went and applied with some of the stuff I'd done to art school. And luckily, I got in on a foundation course. And then there it was like, I met a great bunch of people, but it was like at Newcastle College, which is in the West End. But it was like, yeah, it was a bit of an eye opener, you know? You were doing everything again, you were doing everything, but it was a real good um, experience to just kind of explore what you can do, and there was some great tutors there, some great mates made there, and then one day a guy who'd come from Newcastle College, who was at a university or a tech college, who is now calling itself a university, came up and basically said, "Look, you can do this," and he showed us a reel of ads of people who had graduated from uh, it was called Buckinghamshire Chilterns University College, Bucks College, from that course. And I was like, you mean this is a job? This is actually a job. And it relates to what I'm doing now. And it was just mind blowing. It's absolutely like mind blowing. And I can remember then holding that in my head, and there was the Apple Think Different campaign came out. And I was like, that's copywriting that I understand. I didn't know it was called copywriting because the cleverness in it is that it's wrong, if the grammar's not correct. And it was like, actually, it's smart because it's correct, but it's wrong, It's not think differently, it's think different, which again is different. There's an idea in the way it's written. And I was just like, maybe I can do this. Maybe I can do something like this. So there was a few of us actually who were just so inspired that we went down to have a look at this college, university. First person in my family to go to university, to even consider going to university. And obviously, at the time, there was talk about it costing money. So there was a lot of like, oh, God, Um, but I was working as well. So in the vain hope that that would be enough. But anyway, it was means tested. So we didn't pay anything. And for the first term, I actually got a grant. I got a grant being paid. So that was for like boarding and stuff like that. And my mum, bless her, she'd put some money aside from one of her jobs into an account, an emergency fund at, for a bank. She'd give me a card when we started. But like, yeah, at that university was great. It was like amazing. It was a really properly conceptually thought, conceptually it focused you on that, not just the way you do the ideas, but what the ideas are, which is great. And it was like another eye-opening experience. And it's the people you meet there as well. Made some great friends there, who ended up in the industry as well. Um, some from very similar backgrounds. But now it's like I look at university and I think, how on earth are people doing this? You know? The loans that you have to take, even if it's means tested, the loans that you have to pay just for accommodation and food, and especially in near London, coming from the northeast, it's just impossible.
Yeah, it's extortionate. And
Yeah,
I think what your point is right. Everybody needs a Mr. Brown, don't they? They need that person that's gonna
yeah,
give them a bit of inspiration. And I know that's not necessarily the person that told you about the kind of ad career, but it's serendipity, isn't it? That's life. Someone tells you about something, you do something else, you hang about with different types of people. And I just think sometimes in life when things are not fair for whatever reason, I always, and I have to believe in my own head that everything happens for a reason. So there's a reason something happened or didn't work out, because I was listening to something that was on TikTok, and it was this lady talking about no idea, no decision's a bad decision because you don't know what the alternative would have done anyway. You don't know the difference that would have made or not. So you can't live your life beating yourself up.
It's funny because I say that at work a bit. I say like, we'll go down one route to get to an idea, and it might not be right. And I go, well, look, it's not wasted time. We know that that's the wrong thing to do now. And it's like I'll say a no when we present work. A no is as helpful as a yes because it's like that is the wrong way, this is the right way.
Yes.
Obviously, it'd be perfect if you just landed on the right idea first, but you have to know why it's the right idea.
Yeah.
Sometimes no's help you get to understand why that's the right idea, what the client's feeling or thinking, and you can push them, but you can push them too far.
You can. Well, I
They just
guess the
like,
other
you
the other
know,
way to look at that as well is actually there was nothing to say that that was a wrong idea. It's just the person paying the money said that was a wrong idea.
no, yeah, totally. And I
That's the
mean that
difference.
internally. Like we'll work on it and we'll try to get it work, and then we'll go, nah, it's not right. But and people will go, oh, we've worked for ages on that, and I was going, look, but now we know really clearly, like there's some good things in that, but actually, it's not correct. It's not wasted time. It's just actually been helpful time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it
So it's
inspires the next job. I mean, when you came out of uni then, so I'm guessing you got your grades or whatever you were going after, and then what kind of happened sort of after that?
so well, funny enough, we graduated in 2001, and it was I think we'd been. So a lot of us moved into Cricklewood, right? We moved into this big 7 bedroomed house, literally on the railway. And there was 3 lads from Newcastle, um, and then a lad, one of my work partner from college from West Country, and a lad, my best mate from Derby, and there's a Nottingham, and yeah, and Leeds, and all lads, all from very similar background. And the day after our graduation was September 11th. So we were sat at home going, oh God. We were all going, oh, we're going to be called up, we're going to be doing this. But thankfully, it wasn't as, shocking at the time. But so we just went on a spree of kind of, this is we need to get a job now, right? We have the qualifications. We've got it wasn't so much, nobody has ever asked me what grade of degree I got. They've always wanted to see the work. And a lot of the work that I did it actually on the degree was never used. It was work after that I used in the book to get that first like job. And what we used to do was, interestingly, when everyone else was making a book, and this is just amazing again, is like everyone was making a book of scamps, right? Scamps, scamps, scamps. And we were just like, me and my work partner at college, Tom, we were just like, it's a bit of a waste, isn't it? There's this camera equipment down in the university, and there's like a, a compute an actual computer you can edit stuff on. Wow! And so we just made a reel of ideas of our thoughts and creative ideas. So that was our book. Our book was an actual reel that we take around. So we got VHS copies made up, and we would go around agencies in London, and we'd split up and we'd go around, and we had little stickers made of the both of us, and we'd go
You've
around
done it as
and
a duo. That this was a
yeah, yeah, from
joint thing.
college, yeah. So we'd go around and we'd just kind of harass people. So I think Tom went and harassed Wydens, and I was harassing Channel 4 when he called up, and he was like, oh, Tony Davidson's just said come in for a placement. So we went in, and Tom said, Tom was like, he went into the reception, was like, hi, can I just leave this? And they were like, yeah, okay, yeah, yeah. And then he went to the toilet and he started sticking the stickers of both of us up on the mirror. And then who should come out of the toilet but Tony Davidson? And he's washing his hands going, is that you? And obviously, yes, it was. So, and he was like, yeah, come in for a placement. So it was great. Again, serendipitous, right? As you said. So we came in for a placement, and yeah, it was great. Wyden and Kennedy then, obviously it's quite big now, was tiny, was probably 15 people maybe. Um, so we were ecstatic. And we worked on a bunch of stuff, and then we got we kept sending these reels out, and we sent one off to Amsterdam to Kessel's Kramer because they were an amazing agency. They're still a great agency, but they were just in Amsterdam at the time. And we got a call from Eric Kessel saying, "Guys, you should come out." So we kind of left Wydens, and I did the smartest thing I think I've ever done. Tony and Kim, who were the creative directors at Wydens, took us out for lunch, and they offered us a job, a proper job. And we said, we've been offered a job at Kessel's Kramer. And I said, the smartest thing I've ever said. I said, "What would you do?" And Tony went, "Well, I'd go to Kessel's Kramer and then come back here, you know, because it was like it was a 3 month, 3 or 6 months, freelance in Amsterdam." So I said, "What would you do?" And he went, "Go there and then come back here, because you'll have experience from there and you can use it here." And that's exactly what we did. And we did some work out in Amsterdam. It was great. Again, the job opening up the world to me. And I mean, we were living in tiny digs. It was like 10 of us in one tiny Dutch apartment. And but yeah, it was good fun, that actually. We met a few people there. Um we met a team, Marcus and Cece, who had just left Mother to work at Kessel's Kramer, and they were returning to Mother on the same day we were leaving to go to Wydens. And then we ended up at Mother after a year or two at Wyden Kennedy. But yeah, it was, again, it's just this job opening up the world to you, like, it's quite simply like that. It's amazing through the people you meet, and it's yeah, it's great. It's good.
And how did it work, in terms of your family? Like, what were they saying at this point? So, you've not only kind of gone to London, you're now in
Yeah.
Amsterdam. Like, what's going on in their mind? And you were the first one to ever go to uni as well.
Well, I think, yeah, massively proud. I think first out is obviously just the money. Like, how much is this going to cost? What's going to do? What you're going to do for work? How you're going to survive? All this kind of stuff. And then once they were kind of reassured that if you fill in all of these forms, you know, you're not paying anything. And then just like, I can remember having a conversation with my mum about the loan, and she was like, "You're going to be," because the loans happened in the second year, I think, to actually live. So they took away the grants and stuff, and then the council wouldn't pay. And so the loan just for the accommodation, the student loan, not for the tuition. And yeah, I can remember having a conversation with my mum. Goes, "That's a lot to take on," and stuff like that. And I was like, I was young. I was like, it wasn't real money, right? It was like digits. It wasn't like actual cash. So I was like, "Yeah, it's fine, whatever." Um, you know, and if I was unemployed, I wouldn't have to pay it back, so no one's going to chase me. So there was always that as well. Could always be unemployed. Not that but I think I'd never be that. I'd just be like working. I'd find something to do. But like this idea of being able to do what I was hoping to do. But I think also this, like, there was that I have to make it work. And I, again, to this kind of hunger of like, not so much like there's a hunger to work, but also to not let your parents down, or not to be proven, not to make sure they're proven right or anything. Um, and hopefully I've done
I'm
that.
sure. Well, the thing is, it's all about how the mighty has fallen, isn't it? My mum used to always say, just be very careful how you treat people on the way up, because you might meet them on the way back down again. And it was funny because it was a couple of months ago, I was over in Singapore actually with a couple of my team. And I was saying, see, when you guys are a lot more successful than what I am today, would you employ me? Of course, I said yes, correct answer. But it's true because,
Yeah,
where we are just now, the people that you're managing, or whoever, people one day that they're going to be much higher up in the ranks than you, and it's just a fact of life. It's just the way things work. And so I guess, but at the same token with your family, I can see how, you've been so successful. You're sort of on this pedestal to a degree, and you're like, you don't want to drop off, because it's almost like the walk of shame as well, in your head.
they might put me on a pedestal, but they certainly wouldn't treat me like that. They'd want to knock you. I think that's that working class thing. Don't get ahead of yourself.
Yeah.
I'll go to the working men's club when I get home, and it'll be like, "Oh, yeah, he doesn't pay his dues. He doesn't pay his dues," and all this kind of stuff. And I'm like, all right, I only come here like at Christmas and Easter, whenever I'm up. We don't always come in here. It's like, But it's they changed their tune when because my brother used to run the football club, and when I was working for Nike, you used to get like a card for 50% discount, and they were all suddenly like, oh yeah, and I had a list of stuff to get the guys from the club, and I had to explain I'm only allowed to spend certain amount of money a month on getting boots and trainers and all this kind of stuff. But when I was valuable to them, it changed it. They changed the
Of
tune a lot.
course, you're paying
Yeah,
it back. I mean, the one thing that you said I found really interesting that sort of tickled me a bit was when you said when you created ads, you would occasionally throw in your friends' names.
yeah, yeah.
And so equally like me, and I don't, I think I do it subconsciously, but either when I do the podcast, when I MC award shows for hundreds and hundreds of people, and I always somehow talk about my family, or they come in certain ways, or I tell little anecdote stories. But for me, it's almost like the buzz. You're almost helping them live it with you when they're not in the same
Mm,
way.
mm.
So I
Yeah, it's,
actually get that.
yeah, it's including them a little bit. It's the little kind of like, oh, look, I mentioned you, or like that, just so you can go like, ah, look. Also, it gets them to pay attention to the ad. So I don't know, I'm doing my small bit.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so they care.
yeah.
And so what do you think it is? Like you were saying, like you think at the beginning it's like the kind of working class way. So if we're kind of getting to the sort of crux of it, what do you
Mm.
think is the kind of working class traits that help? And I'm not suggesting, by the way, that people who are not working class are not
Oh yeah,
successful.
yeah.
But
No,
for the
totally not.
context of this, I know you're not saying that either. But from the context of this, what are the traits of a working class person that helps them become successful?
Um, well, there's an enormous amount of luck, I think, and as you say, being in the right place at the right time. But you've kind of got. I can remember my dad said to me, the hardest thing to get is an opportunity, right? Once you've got an opportunity, you can prove yourself. But the hardest thing to get is an opportunity. And unfortunately, if you're working class, those opportunities are thin, right? Like, you know, I, if you're middle class and you know someone in a particular industry, there's an opportunity. But like for me, I didn't even know the job existed. How can I know someone who's in that? And I think, thankfully, people returning home and opening up the eyes and going like, oh, look, there's this or there's that, and you can do this as an actual job. It's not an in, but it's an opening. It's not a foot in the door, but it's like, look, there is a door. And I think then you've just it's that it's kind of the hunger and the scrappiness, but also that there's a bit of like it's not fair. There's a bit of I'm going to fight for this. There's a bit of drive more so than, and it's not like I'm going to fight. I have to fight for this. And I think that's the difference. I think, you know, when push comes to shove, it's like, is it worth the effort? A lot of people will go, oh, is it worth the effort? But I think a lot of worker class people will just won't think that. They will push it, you know, and keep pushing on. And again, as you say, it's not, it's not a, it's sort of, there are more working class people like that than there are not, if you know what I mean. It's not saying there's nobody like that in middle class, but I think it's kind of the nature and the nurture of growing up in that environment. You
Yeah,
have to, or else people are going to take advantage of you. People will get that, you know? It's kind of like running to the front of the dinner queue. You want to be at the front. You don't want the scrappy crap stuff, that scabby stuff at the end, you know? And yes, it's free dinners, but it's like you want to, if you're not at the front, that's when they start getting the portions start getting smaller because they've got to make sure that enough are there. So it's
absolutely.
kind of like there's that mentality of being there, right? It's and I don't, a lot of middle class, they've never wanted, they've never had to do that. So there's never that inherent desire to do that.
That's so true. Do you know, I think that's why my family are always the front of the buffet queue.
Well,
Whenever
there's
we
seven
go
of
to a
them in the
party,
dinner
we're
buffet,
like
right?
literally make, let's go first, and you don't get the scraps. That's so funny. And it's from being from a big family as well. We're the same. We're
Yeah.
just like, yeah, you don't want
It's
to miss out.
funny. I'll take my dad, like he'll come down and I'll take him to some really nice places, right? Like really great food. Like, and he'll go, portions are a bit small, aren't they? We'll go back home and he'll take me somewhere. He loves Newcastle is full of tapas places. And he'll go, look at this tapas place here. And I'll go, what? massive, great food, massive portions. And I'm like, is it any good? He's going, yeah, but you get loads. And I'm like, and that's such a working class mentality of like big food, lots of food is a good food, you
Yeah.
know?
Well, it's a
I think
sign
it's
of being wealthy.
lots of it.
Yeah, it's a sign of having money, isn't it? Like when we were growing up, our family, it
Mm.
was never about the cash because they didn't have a lot of it, but it was about if you could get fed, and my mum overfed you. I'm surprised I'm not obese, to be honest. But the amount of food we got, it was on tap whenever to your point, you don't go hungry. And I think that to me is obviously, your dad's currency for being quite well off, I guess.
Yeah, yeah, it is. It is. I
Totally.
mean, when we go back, it's just like, yeah, it's just too much food. There's always too much food.
And so as we sort of start wrapping up, I would love to know, like, you obviously sound you're quite sorted. You obviously remain very humble. I can tell that just from chatting with you. Do you think at any point in your career still now, given the fact that you're established, you've worked in loads of campaigns, you're really successful, is there moments of time where you'd still doubt yourself?
All the time. I don't think I kind of I worry about people who don't. I'm going like, where the hell do you? And I think like I can remember having a chat with the the founders of Mother, Robert and Mark, and the creative founders, and I can remember going out, and this is years ago, and they were, and they were talking about confidence and going, you just need to be a bit more confident. And Mother's in a fantastic place for building up your confidence of like, because they drop you in at the deep end. You present to clients, you do this, you talk them through that. And I can remember them going like, we'll go and present to people and we're worried that they'll ask this one question. They ask the one question we don't have an answer to and it'll all fall apart and they'll all see that we're an absolute fraud. And I'm like, what? You think like that? And I think if you're not thinking like that, then somebody might ask you that question. It's like, you know, I'll go to like Teams and I'll go, when you write the line, you've probably written it 16, 17, 18, 100 times. So when someone goes, what if it needs to be this way? Or what if you tried? It's like, I tried it, it doesn't work. And this is why it doesn't work. If you're not interrogating yourself and self-critical, which I think a lot of creatives are, then you can't justify why you got to that point. So I think there's always self-doubt, but I think if you've answered, there's runaway self-doubt, which is just like a spiral down. But if you've doubted certain things and stood back and then figured it out and went, oh yes, oh no, that's great, that's really good, that makes sense, that's logical, that really fits together, that's a really powerful idea, then that's great because any question somebody answers of you or it, the idea, you can answer it. Whereas
Yeah.
if you just went, this idea is fantastic, and it's like slap it down on the table, and it's like, but what about it? And you go, you can't. People can smell that. They can just smell bullshit, And you can try it, but it's like if you've got to go like, well, we did think about that, we did try that, but this is why it doesn't work, you know. And I think that's a bit more powerful than just going, yeah, it's fantastic, you know. And I think if you don't, maybe self-doubt's the wrong word. Maybe it's self-critical, you know. But again, they can get run away. As confidence can run away, being self-critical can run away
Yeah.
with itself. It needs to be balanced in a way.
Absolutely. And I think, that is a really good way to end it because you talked about, not getting ahead of yourself. And so it was really nice that you changed that to self-critical because as a working class person, you don't ever want to get above your station and you always want to remain really humble. So you just finished on that very humble note. So thank you so much. I think people
Great.
tuning in are going, oh, my lights went. I love it when it's okay. I'm not even going to edit this part out because that's what makes it fun. But, I think the thing is, hearing from someone like you will definitely inspire others. And I think, you've kind of hit the nail on the head. It's about hanging out with the right people. It's about just believing in yourself, but not getting above your station and just, I guess, remaining close also to the friends and family that brought you up and looked after you when you really needed it most. So thank you so much.
Machine.